The Curious Mind, Richard Feynman's Path to True Understanding, by Sean Young. Published by The Growth Reads. Introduction. The Art of Not Fooling Yourself. The young physicist stood at the blackboard, chalk dust coating his fingers, staring at an equation that should have made sense. Around him, fellow graduate students nodded along with the professor's explanation, scribbling notes furiously. But Richard Feynman wasn't nodding. Something felt wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. While others rushed to memorize the formula, Feynman did something different. He raised his hand and asked, "But why?" That simple question would become the foundation of his legendary career, earning him a Nobel Prize and a reputation as one of the greatest teachers in physics. But more importantly, it revealed a universal truth about human understanding that extends far beyond science. The depth of our knowledge isn't measured by what we can repeat, but by what we can explain. In today's world, we're drowning in information but starving for understanding. We screenshot articles we never read, save posts we never revisit, and collect digital notes that become digital dust. We mistake familiarity for knowledge and confidence for competence. The cost of this shallow learning isn't just professional. It affects every aspect of our lives, from our relationships to our personal growth. This book introduces the Feynman framework for true understanding, a revolutionary approach to learning and thinking that transforms how we engage with knowledge. Based on Richard Feynman's legendary learning methods and supported by modern cognitive science, this framework will show you how to transform surface knowledge into deep understanding, identify and fill critical gaps in your thinking, develop unshakable confidence in your abilities, become a more effective teacher and communicator, find joy and wonder in the learning process. Through this journey, you'll discover that true understanding isn't just about accumulating facts. It's about developing a mindset of genuine curiosity and intellectual honesty. You'll learn why Feynman's approach of explaining it to a child reveals more about your own understanding than your listener's comprehension. And you'll see how this method can be applied to any field, from business strategy to personal relationships. The 4 pillars of the Feynman framework. Curious questioning, learning to ask the right questions at the right depth. Simplification mastery, breaking complex ideas into fundamental building blocks. Teaching as learning, using explanation as a tool for discovery. Intellectual honesty, developing the courage to admit what you don't know. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore each of these pillars in detail, supported by real-world case studies from Feynman's life and modern applications, practical exercises to develop your understanding, scientific research on learning and cognition, stories from successful practitioners across diverse fields. The promise of this book is not just better learning, it's a fundamental transformation in how you engage with the world. By the final page, you'll have a robust framework for developing genuine understanding in any domain, the confidence to admit when you don't know something, and the tools to fill those gaps effectively. Prepare to embark on a journey that will change not just what you know, but how you know it. Welcome to the path of true understanding. Chapter 1. The Courage to be Curious. I would rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned. Richard Feynman. The scene was tense in the Rogers Commission hearing room. NASA's top engineers had just finished explaining why they believed the O-rings couldn't have caused the Challenger disaster. Their presentations were filled with complex technical jargon and sophisticated analyses. Then Richard Feynman, sitting quietly at the end of the table, did something unexpected. He dropped a piece of O-ring material into a glass of ice water. The simple demonstration, showing how the material lost its resilience in cold temperatures, cut through hours of technical testimony. It revealed a fundamental truth that had been buried under layers of complexity. But more importantly, it demonstrated the power of curious questioning, the willingness to test basic assumptions and search for simple explanations. This chapter explores the first pillar of the Feynman framework, curious questioning. You'll learn why the most powerful questions are often the simplest, how to develop the courage to question obvious truths, the difference between productive and unproductive questioning, techniques for maintaining curiosity in familiar territories, methods for overcoming the fear of appearing ignorant. The simple question revolution. When Feynman joined the Manhattan Project as a young physicist, he encountered a peculiar phenomenon. In a room filled with the world's brightest minds, he noticed that breakthrough insights often came not from complex theories, but from someone willing to ask seemingly basic questions. While senior scientists debated sophisticated mathematical models, Feynman would raise his hand and ask, "What exactly do we mean by that?" This approach, initially seen as naive by some, repeatedly led to crucial discoveries. It wasn't that Feynman couldn't understand the complex explanations. He simply refused to accept understanding something until he could break it down to its fundamental elements. The art of productive questioning. Sarah Chun, a software architect at a major tech company, faced a critical system failure that had stumped her team for weeks. Following Feynman's approach, she stepped back from the sophisticated debugging tools and asked a question that seemed almost too basic. What do we actually see when the system fails? This simple inquiry led the team to notice a pattern in user behavior that all their complex analysis had missed. The key difference between productive and unproductive questioning lies in their intent. Productive questions seek to understand fundamental principles, challenge basic assumptions, focus on observable phenomena, lead to testable hypotheses. Unproductive questions demonstrate existing knowledge, accept assumptions without examination, focus on theoretical abstractions, lead to circular discussions, breaking through the expert's paradox. The greatest barrier to curious questioning often isn't lack of knowledge, it's having too much of it. This phenomenon, known as the expert's paradox, occurs when our expertise actually prevents us from seeing simple solutions. Consider Dr. James Murray, a renowned heart surgeon who revolutionized his hospital's treatment protocols by asking a question that seemed obvious in retrospect. Why do we keep patients lying down after surgery when humans naturally heal better sitting up? This simple inquiry, which challenged decades of standard practice, led to significantly improved recovery times. Maintaining curiosity in familiar territory. Feynman had a unique technique for staying curious about familiar subjects. He would imagine explaining them to someone who had never encountered them before. This beginner's mind approach helped him discover new insights in well-studied areas of physics. Lisa Rodriguez, a high school science teacher, adopted this technique with remarkable results. When teaching concepts she'd covered dozens of times, she would ask herself, if I knew nothing about this, what would puzzle me most? This approach not only improved her teaching, but led to deeper insights into the material itself. The courage to not know. Perhaps the most challenging aspect of curious questioning is overcoming the fear of appearing ignorant. Feynman once remarked that the most important scientific attitude was the ability to doubt, to admit ignorance, to be unsure. Mark Suzuki, a junior analyst at an investment firm, credits this principle for his rapid rise within the company. During his first year, in a meeting with senior executives, he asked what seemed like an embarrassingly basic question about their valuation model. That question revealed a critical flaw in their assumptions, potentially saving millions in bad investments. The path forward. The power of curious questioning isn't limited to science or technology. Whether you're a parent trying to understand your child's behavior, an artist exploring new techniques, or a business leader navigating market changes, the ability to ask fundamental questions and the courage to voice them can lead to breakthrough insights. As we move forward, remember, the goal isn't to appear knowledgeable, but to achieve genuine understanding. In the chapters ahead, we'll build on this foundation, exploring how to break down complex ideas, teach effectively, and maintain intellectual honesty in all aspects of life. Chapter 2. Simplification Mastery. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Attributed to Einstein, practiced by Feynman. The lecture hall at Caltech was packed. Students waited eagerly for their first physics class with Professor Feynman. When he began speaking, many were surprised. Instead of diving into complex equations, he started with a simple question. What do you think about when you hear the word energy? Over the next hour, Feynman explained one of physics' most fundamental concepts without using a single technical term. He spoke of children on swings, balls rolling down hills, and rubber bands stretching. By stripping away jargon and connecting to everyday experience, he didn't simplify the concept, he clarified it. This chapter explores the second pillar of the Feynman framework, simplification mastery. You'll discover the 3 levels of simplification, how to identify core principles in complex systems, the art of creating powerful analogies, techniques for visual explanation, methods for testing your simplified explanations, the 3 levels of deep simplification. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a neuroscientist turned tech CEO, faced a critical challenge, explaining her company's advanced AI algorithms to potential investors who had no technical background. Following Feynman's approach, she developed what we now call the 3 levels of deep simplification. Level 1. Language simplification. The first level involves translating technical jargon into everyday language. But this isn't about dumbing down, it's about clarifying up. When Feynman taught quantum mechanics, he would first explain concepts using only words a child would understand. This forced him to grasp the essence of each idea. Martinez applied this by describing her AI's decision-making process not as multi-layered neural network optimization, but as teaching a computer to learn from its mistakes, just like a child learning to ride a bike. Level 2. Structural simplification. At this level, we break complex systems into their fundamental components. Feynman revolutionized particle physics partly because he could mentally decompose complex interactions into simple, visual diagrams, now known as Feynman diagrams. James Chun, a software architect, used this approach to revolutionize his team's debugging process. Instead of diving into complicated code traces, he first drew simple boxes representing data flow. This bird's-eye view often revealed problems that were invisible at the code level. Level 3. Conceptual simplification. The deepest level involves finding the universal principles that underlie seemingly different phenomena. Feynman was famous for finding connections between disparate physics problems by reducing them to their essential nature. The art of analogy. Michael Torres, a high school teacher in Brooklyn, transformed his chemistry class by mastering what Feynman called practical analogies. Instead of having students memorize electron configurations, he compared atoms to a school cafeteria. The tables are electron shells. Students are electrons. Popular tables fill up first. Students sit as far from each other as possible. Test scores improve dramatically, but more importantly, students began understanding rather than just memorizing. Visual thinking. The power of diagrams. Feynman's diagrams weren't just illustrations, they were thinking tools. They allowed physicists to solve complex problems by manipulating simple pictures. This wasn't about artistic skill, it was about capturing essential relationships visually. Dr. Lisa Wu, a climate scientist, adapted this approach to explain complex atmospheric systems. She developed simple, memorable diagrams that helped policymakers understand climate feedback loops. The key, she says, is not to show everything, but to show the right things. Testing your simplification. How do you know if your simplification is effective rather than oversimplified? Feynman developed several tests. The prediction test. Can your simple model make accurate predictions? The reverse test. Can you rebuild the complex version from your simple one? The extension test. Does your simplification help understand related concepts? The simplification trap. However, Feynman warned against oversimplification. During the Challenger investigation, he noticed how complex engineering realities had been reduced to oversimplified safety ratings. This dangerous oversimplification contributed to the disaster. The key is to simplify without losing essential complexity. As Einstein reportedly said, everything should be made as simple as possible, but no simpler. Real-world applications. The power of simplification extends far beyond physics. Consider a startup founder who quintupled investor interest by explaining complex technology through everyday analogies. A doctor who improved patient compliance by creating simple visual models of treatment plans. A legal team that won a complex case by reducing it to 3 fundamental principles. Moving forward, as we progress through this book, you'll see how simplification mastery combines with our other principles. In the next chapter, We'll explore how breaking down complex ideas enables more effective teaching and learning. Remember, true simplification isn't about reducing complexity, it's about revealing clarity. Chapter 3. The Art of Deconstruction. What I cannot create, I do not understand. Richard Feynman. One weekend in 1940, a young Richard Feynman decided to make pancakes for the first time. Instead of following a recipe, he approached it like a physics problem. What makes pancakes fluffy? Why do we need each ingredient? Through systematic experimentation, he discovered a role of baking powder, the importance of mixing order, and even why the first pancake often fails. This wasn't just about breakfast, it was about understanding through deconstruction. This chapter explores the third pillar of the Feynman framework, the art of deconstruction. You'll learn how to break complex systems into fundamental components, why understanding parts reveals the whole, techniques for identifying hidden connections, methods for testing component relationships, strategies for rebuilding understanding from basics, the power of taking things apart. In the early days of personal computing, a young Steve Wozniak spent countless hours deconstructing existing computers. He didn't just want to know what they did. He wanted to understand how each component contributed to the whole. This deep understanding through deconstruction ultimately led him to design the Apple I computer with remarkably few components, revolutionizing personal computing. The 3 principles of effective deconstruction. Start with the observable. When Feynman tackled quantum mechanics problems, he always began with observable phenomena before diving into mathematical abstractions. This grounding in reality prevented him from getting lost in theoretical constructs. Identify core components. Like a master watchmaker disassembling a complex timepiece, effective deconstruction requires identifying essential parts. But more importantly, it requires understanding why each part is essential. Map relationships. Understanding parts is only half the battle. The magic lies in understanding how they interact. What Feynman called the dance of the pieces, breaking down complex systems. Dr. Maria Rodriguez, a software architect at a major tech company, faced a seemingly insurmountable challenge, a legacy system so complex that no one dared to modify it. Using Feynman's deconstruction approach, she began mapping not just what each component did, but why it existed in the first place. The breakthrough came, she recalls, when we stopped looking at the system as it was and started asking what problem each piece was originally meant to solve. This approach revealed unnecessary complications that had accumulated over years of patches and updates. The 4 steps of systematic deconstruction. Observation without assumption. Begin by observing the system in action, noting what actually happens rather than what you think should happen. When Feynman studied ant behavior, he didn't start with biology textbooks. He watched actual ants, tracking their movements and interactions. Component identification. List all observable parts of a system. For each component, ask, what role does it play? Could the system function without it? How does it interact with other components? Relationship mapping. Document how components interact. Dr. James Chun, a neuroscientist, revolutionized his research by mapping neural pathways this way. Instead of getting lost in the complexity of the brain, we focused on understanding one connection at a time. Reconstruction testing. The ultimate test of understanding is rebuilding. Can you reconstruct the system from your understanding of its parts? The hidden power of empty spaces. Feynman often emphasized the importance of what's not there. In particle physics, understanding the vacuum, the apparent emptiness between particles, proved crucial. This principle applies broadly. In music, the silence between notes creates rhythm. In architecture, empty space defines function. In communication, what's unsaid often matters most. Real-world applications. Sarah Kim, a management consultant, applied deconstruction to transform a struggling retail chain. Instead of viewing the business as a single entity, she broke it down into distinct value streams. Customer acquisition, product selection, inventory management, customer experience, back-end operations. By understanding each component separately, then mapping their interactions, she identified inefficiencies that were invisible at the system level. Common deconstruction pitfalls. The complexity trap. Sometimes complex systems seem irreducible. The key is finding the right level of analysis. When Feynman studied turbulence in fluid dynamics, he started not with equations, but with simple observations of water flowing in a stream. The false essential. Not everything that exists in a system is necessary. Many components exist for historical reasons or due to accumulated cruft. The challenge is distinguishing truly essential elements from historical accidents. The relationship fallacy. Just because two components exist together doesn't mean they're necessarily related. Correlation isn't causation, a principle Feynman frequently emphasized in his research. Testing your understanding. Feynman proposed 3 tests for thorough deconstruction. The prediction test. Can you predict how the system will behave in new situations? The explanation test. Can you explain how each component contributes to the whole? The reconstruction test. Could you rebuild the system from scratch if needed? From theory to practice. Michael Torres, a high school teacher, transformed his approach to teaching literature by applying deconstruction principles, breaking down complex narratives into core conflicts, mapping character relationships and motivations, identifying structural patterns across different stories. His students' comprehension improved dramatically, and more importantly, they developed analytical skills applicable far beyond literature. Moving forward. As we'll see in the next chapter, the ability to deconstruct complex systems is intimately linked with the ability to teach effectively. When you truly understand how something works at its component level, you can explain it in multiple ways, adapting to different learners' needs. Remember, the goal of deconstruction isn't just to take things apart, it's to understand them deeply enough to put them back together in new and better ways. Chapter 4. Teaching as Discovery. If you want to master something, teach it. Richard Feynman. The physics department at Caltech was buzzing with excitement. Feynman had just agreed to teach an introductory physics course, a task usually delegated to junior faculty. When asked why he would waste his time teaching freshmen, Feynman replied, "There's no better way to learn than to teach." What followed became one of the most celebrated physics courses in history, later published as the Feynman Lectures on Physics. This chapter explores the 4th pillar of the Feynman framework, teaching as discovery. You'll learn why teaching reveals hidden knowledge gaps, how explanation leads to deeper understanding, the power of multiple perspectives, methods for clear communication, the connection between teaching and learning, the teaching paradox. Dr. Sarah Chun, a renowned AI researcher, made her biggest breakthrough while teaching an introductory machine learning course. In trying to explain neural networks to beginners, she recalls, "I suddenly saw connections I'd missed in my own research." Teaching wasn't just sharing knowledge, it was creating new understanding. This phenomenon, which we'll call the teaching paradox, reveals a fundamental truth. The act of teaching often teaches the teacher more than the student. The 3 levels of understanding. Surface understanding. Knowing what something does or how it works at a basic level. Most people stop here. Functional understanding. Knowing how to use knowledge effectively and solve related problems. Teaching understanding. Being able to reconstruct knowledge from first principles and adapt explanations to different audiences. The mirror effect. When Feynman taught quantum mechanics, he noticed that student questions often revealed holes in his own understanding. This mirror effect became a crucial tool in his learning process. Dr. James Morrison, a cardiothoracic surgeon, applies this principle in training new surgeons. When residents ask naive questions, they often expose assumptions I've never examined. These questions have led to several innovations in our surgical procedures. Multiple perspectives. One of Feynman's great talents was explaining the same concept in multiple ways. He could describe quantum mechanics through mathematical equations, visual diagrams, physical analogies, practical examples. This ability wasn't just about communication. It reflected a deeper understanding of the subject matter. The language of clarity. Maria Rodriguez, a software architect, transformed her company's documentation process by applying Feynman's teaching principles. Instead of technical jargon, she encouraged developers to explain systems as if speaking to a smart friend from another field. Teaching without teaching. Not all teaching happens in classrooms. Sarah Kim, a project manager, applies these principles in business meetings, breaking down complex proposals into clear concepts, using analogies from common experience, building understanding through storytelling, adapting explanations based on audience feedback. The learning loop. Feynman described learning as a circular process. Study the material. Attempt to teach it. Identify gaps in understanding. Return to study with new insights. This loop creates a continuously deepening understanding. Teaching in the digital age. Modern technology has expanded opportunities for teaching-based learning. Online tutorials force clear, structured thinking. Video explanations require precise communication. Written guides demand logical organization. Community forums provide immediate feedback. Beyond traditional teaching. The principles of teaching as discovery apply beyond formal education. Engineers documenting systems. Managers explaining strategies. Parents answering children's questions. Artists describing their process. Moving forward. As we'll explore in the next chapter, teaching as discovery naturally leads to intellectual honesty. When you attempt to teach something, you quickly discover what you don't understand, and acknowledging these gaps is the first step to filling them. Remember, every explanation is an opportunity for discovery, and every question is a chance to deepen understanding. Chapter 5. Intellectual Honesty. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. Richard Feynman. The room fell silent at NASA's Rogers Commission hearing. Feynman had just asked what seemed like a simple question. What is the probability of a catastrophic failure? When engineers cited a 1 in 100,000 risk, Feynman revealed their statistical impossibility. This moment wasn't just about numbers. It was about the courage to face uncomfortable truths. This chapter explores the fifth pillar of the Feynman framework, intellectual honesty. You'll learn why acknowledging uncertainty leads to better decisions, how to recognize self-deception, the power of admitting knowledge gaps, the role of intellectual honesty in innovation, the connection between honesty and credibility, the courage of uncertainty. Dr. James Liu, a leading cancer researcher, struggled with a career-defining moment. His team's promising drug trial showed positive results, but something felt off. Following Feynman's principle of intellectual honesty, he re-examined the data. The uncomfortable truth he discovered, a subtle bias in their methodology, led to a breakthrough in cancer treatment protocols. The 3 pillars of intellectual honesty. Acknowledging uncertainty. Feynman was famous for saying, "I don't know," even at the height of his career. This wasn't weakness, it was strength. It created space for discovery, distinguishing knowledge levels, understanding the difference between what you know, what you think you know, what you assume, what you've been told, accepting error. Mistakes aren't failures, they're data points. Feynman viewed errors as opportunities for understanding. The cost of self-deception. Sarah Martinez, a tech startup founder, shares how intellectual honesty saved her company. We were convinced our product was perfect. Only when we started honestly acknowledging its flaws did we create something truly valuable. Professional integrity in practice. Michael Chun, a senior software architect, transformed his team's culture by introducing what he calls Feynman meetings. The only rule: everyone must be explicit about their level of certainty when making statements. The language of honesty. Feynman developed specific language patterns that promoted intellectual honesty. Based on what we know, the evidence suggests. I'm not certain about. Let's examine our assumptions. Beyond individual honesty. Organizations can foster intellectual honesty through reward systems that value accurate assessment over positive spin, decision-making processes that explicitly account for uncertainty, communication norms that encourage questioning assumptions, leadership that models comfort with uncertainty. The Challenger example. The Challenger disaster provides a stark example of what happens when institutional pressure overcomes intellectual honesty. Engineers who knew about potential O-ring problems felt unable to express their concerns effectively. Innovation through honesty. Dr. Lisa Wong, an AI researcher, credits intellectual honesty for her team's breakthroughs. When we stopped pretending to understand how our models made decisions and admitted our uncertainty, we started asking better questions. The paradox of expertise. The more you know about a field, the harder it becomes to maintain intellectual honesty. Experts often defend existing knowledge rather than question it, miss novel approaches due to established patterns, confuse familiarity with understanding. Crisis and honesty. Times of crisis reveal the value of intellectual honesty. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, institutions that had been honest about their risk exposure survived better than those that had deceived themselves. The future of honesty. In an era of artificial intelligence and big data, intellectual honesty becomes even more crucial. Understanding model limitations, acknowledging data biases, recognizing the difference between correlation and causation, maintaining humility in the face of complexity. Moving forward, as we'll explore in the next chapter, intellectual honesty creates the foundation for powerful observation. Only when we're honest about what we don't know can we truly see what's in front of us. Remember, true understanding begins with the courage to say, "I don't know." Chapter 6. The Power of Observation. The most important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existence. Albert Einstein. In the cafeteria at Cornell University, Feynman noticed a student tossing a plate into the air. While others saw mere playfulness, Feynman observed that the plate's wobble had a specific relationship to its spin. This casual observation led to significant insights about quantum mechanics and particle spin, a testament to the power of careful observation. This chapter explores the sixth pillar of the Feynman framework, the power of observation. You'll learn how to develop keen observational skills, the difference between looking and seeing, pattern recognition in complex systems, the role of observation in innovation, how to turn observations into insights, beyond surface seeing. Dr. Maria Patel, an emergency room physician, credits her success to what she calls Feynman watching. During her residency, she noticed subtle patterns in patient behavior that often indicated serious conditions before standard symptoms appeared. Most people look, she says, but few truly observe. The 3 levels of observation. Surface observation. What everyone sees, the obvious, immediate characteristics of a situation or phenomenon. Pattern observation. Recognizing recurring elements, relationships, and sequences that others might miss. Deep observation. Understanding the underlying principles that create the patterns we observe. The art of noticing. James Chun, a product designer at a leading tech company, revolutionized user interface design by observing how people naturally interact with their devices. The best solutions, he notes, often come from watching what people do, not what they say they do. Observation in action. Sarah Kim, a behavioral economist, shares how careful observation transformed her research. We stopped relying solely on what participants reported and started watching what they actually did with their money. The differences were stunning. The hidden stories. Feynman believed that everything we observe tells a story. We just need to learn how to read it. Consider. The wear patterns on a door handle reveal how people naturally grasp it. The paths worn through grass show preferred routes. The distribution of coffee stains on a desk suggests work patterns. Environmental awareness. Dr. Robert Torres, a climate scientist, applies Feynman's observational principles to understanding global systems. Climate change isn't just about data points. It's about noticing the subtle interactions between countless environmental factors. Pattern recognition. Lisa Wu, an artificial intelligence researcher, discovered that the best machine learning models often mirror human pattern recognition. Like Feynman watching his plate spin, we need to recognize patterns across different scales and contexts. The role of context. Michael Santos, a detective, emphasizes the importance of context in observation. It's not just about what you see. It's about understanding the environment that makes what you see meaningful. Observation and innovation. Many breakthrough innovations come from careful observation. Velcro was invented after George de Mestral observed burrs sticking to his dog's fur. The design of high-speed trains was improved by observing kingfisher beaks. Smartphone touchscreens were refined by studying how people naturally interact with objects. Digital age observation. Modern technology has created new opportunities for observation. Data analytics, revealing hidden patterns in behavior. High-speed cameras capturing previously invisible phenomena. Sensors detecting subtle environmental changes. AI systems identifying patterns humans might miss. The connection to understanding. Feynman believed that true understanding comes from combining careful observation with analytical thinking. When examining any phenomenon, he would observe without preconceptions, look for patterns and relationships, test observations against known principles, develop hypotheses based on observations. Cultural observation. Dr. Maya Rodriguez, an anthropologist, applies Feynman's principles to studying societies. Like physics, human culture has underlying patterns. You just need to know how to look for them. Moving forward. As we'll explore in the next chapter, the power of observation connects directly to the cross-pollination of ideas. When we truly observe, we begin to see connections across different fields and disciplines. Remember, the world is full of hidden patterns and relationships. The key is learning to see them. Chapter 7. Cross-pollination of ideas. Physics is like sex. Sure, it may give some practical results, but that's not why we do it. Richard Feynman. In his spare time at Los Alamos, while working on the Manhattan Project, Feynman could often be found picking locks, playing bongo drums, or decoding Mayan hieroglyphics. These weren't mere distractions. They were part of his approach to understanding the universe. His seemingly unrelated interests frequently led to breakthrough insights in physics. This chapter explores the seventh pillar of the Feynman framework, cross-pollination of ideas. You'll learn how different fields of knowledge inform each other, the power of unexpected connections, why diverse interests fuel innovation, the role of analogies in understanding, how to cultivate intellectual diversity, the power of diverse knowledge. Dr. Sarah Chong, a biotech innovator, revolutionized vaccine delivery by studying how Amazon delivers packages. The solution to our cold chain problems, she explains, came from logistics, not biology. Feynman was right. The most powerful insights often come from outside your field. The three principles of cross-pollination: active collection, gathering knowledge from diverse fields, not just those directly related to your work. Connection building, finding patterns and principles that link different domains of knowledge. Creative application, using insights from one field to solve problems in another. Unexpected connections. James Morrison, an architect, transformed sustainable building design by studying termite mounds. Nature solved climate control millions of years ago, he notes. We just needed to make the connection. The Renaissance mind. Feynman advocated for what he called the pleasure of finding things out, pursuing knowledge for its own sake. This approach often led to unexpected practical benefits. His work on quantum computing came partly from thinking about ancient Greek mathematics. His understanding of particle physics was enhanced by his art hobby. His problem-solving methods were influenced by his interest in biology. Breaking down barriers. Lisa Rodriguez, a software designer, created breakthrough user interfaces by studying classical music composition, urban planning, child development, animal behavior. Each field, she says, provided a different perspective on how systems organize and flow. The innovation web. Modern innovation increasingly comes from connecting different fields. Medical devices inspired by automotive engineering. Artificial intelligence enhanced by neuroscience. Climate solutions derived from ancient farming practices. Financial models based on ecosystem dynamics. The role of analogies. Feynman was a master of analogy, explaining quantum mechanics through everyday examples. This wasn't just about communication, it was about understanding. Particle spin explained through plate wobbles. Quantum states compared to playing cards. Nuclear forces illustrated through simple machines. Digital renaissance. The internet age has created unprecedented opportunities for cross-pollination. Access to diverse knowledge sources. global collaboration across disciplines, rapid sharing of insights, tools for recognizing patterns across fields. Beyond specialization, Dr. Michael Chun, a cancer researcher, attributes his breakthroughs to studying complex systems theory, ancient philosophy, modern art, game design. Specialization is necessary, he says, but innovation happens at the intersections. Cultural cross-pollination. Sarah Kim, a business strategist, transformed corporate culture by applying principles from evolutionary biology, social psychology, traditional craftsmanship, environmental science, the future of knowledge. As artificial intelligence and automation handle more specialized tasks, human value increasingly lies in making connections across domains, identifying parallel patterns, applying solutions across fields, creating unexpected combinations, building new frameworks from diverse inputs. Moving forward, as we'll explore in the next chapter, the joy of discovery often comes from these unexpected connections. When we allow ourselves to explore broadly, we don't just solve problems, we find new ways of seeing the world. Remember, every field of knowledge is a potential source of insight for every other field. The key is learning to see the connections. Chapter 8. The Joy of Discovery. The prize is the pleasure of finding things out. Richard Feynman. On a warm evening in Brazil, Feynman found himself in a bar, captivated by the rhythm of samba music. Instead of merely enjoying it as a tourist might, he began to study it systematically. The patterns, the rhythms, the mathematical relationships in the music. Soon he was playing in a local samba band, not just as a hobby, but as another way to understand the patterns that govern our universe. This chapter explores the 8th pillar of the Feynman framework, the joy of discovery. You'll learn why enthusiasm drives deeper understanding, how to maintain curiosity in familiar territory, the connection between play and insight, ways to cultivate intellectual excitement, the role of wonder in scientific thinking, the pleasure principle. Dr. Lisa Chun, a quantum computing researcher, transformed her lab's culture by embracing Feynman's approach to joy. When we stopped treating discovery as work and started treating it as adventure, she recalls, our breakthroughs increased dramatically. The 3 elements of joyful discovery. Natural curiosity, the childlike wonder that makes us ask why and how. Playful exploration, the willingness to experiment without fear of failure. Genuine excitement, the authentic enthusiasm that drives deep investigation. Beyond mere knowledge. James Torres, an astrophysicist, shares how maintaining wonder changed his work. Anyone can learn equations. But when you feel genuine excitement about what those equations mean, that's when you start making real discoveries. The play factor. Feynman was famous for saying physics was like a game. This wasn't about making light of serious work. It was about approaching it with the same enthusiasm and creativity children bring to play. Maintaining wonder. Sarah Kim, a veteran software engineer, keeps her work fresh by looking for beauty in code, finding puzzles in everyday problems, sharing discoveries with others, celebrating small insights. The cycle of discovery. Feynman described a natural cycle in the discovery process. Initial curiosity, excited investigation, challenging confusion, breakthrough insight, renewed wonder, innovation through joy. Dr. Michael Rodriguez revolutionized his approach to medical research by introducing what he calls Feynman Fridays, dedicated time for playful experimentation with no immediate practical goals. The social aspect. Feynman believed that shared joy amplified discovery. Teaching others multiplies understanding. Collaborative exploration yields new insights. Shared enthusiasm drives deeper investigation. Community support encourages risk-taking. Wonder in the digital age. Modern technology offers new opportunities for joyful discovery. Virtual exploration of complex systems. Interactive learning environments. Global communities of enthusiasts. Tools for visualization and experimentation. Beyond academia. Maria Santos, a business consultant, applies the joy of discovery to corporate innovation, encouraging experimental mindsets, celebrating learning from failures, creating space for play, rewarding curiosity. The professional advantage. Research shows that maintaining a sense of wonder provides concrete benefits. Increased creativity, better problem solving, greater resilience, improved collaboration, cultivating joy. Methods for maintaining enthusiasm in long-term work. Finding new perspectives, setting personal challenges, sharing discoveries, celebrating progress. The future of learning. As artificial intelligence handles more routine tasks, human advantage increasingly lies in creative exploration, novel connections, intuitive leaps, passionate pursuit of understanding. Moving forward, as we'll explore in the next chapter, the joy of discovery naturally leads to building better mental models. When we approach learning with enthusiasm, we create stronger, more flexible frameworks for understanding. Remember, true discovery isn't just about finding new things, it's about finding new joy in understanding. Chapter 9. Building Mental Models. What I cannot create, I do not understand. Richard Feynman. The autumn sun was setting over Caltech's campus as Feynman stood at his blackboard, contemplating a particularly thorny physics problem. Rather than diving straight into equations, he began drawing pictures, simple sketches that represented complex quantum interactions. These weren't just illustrations, they were mental models, ways of grasping abstract concepts through concrete visualization. These drawings would eventually revolutionize physics as the famous Feynman diagrams. This chapter explores the ninth pillar of the Feynman framework, building mental models. Through Feynman's approach, we'll discover how creating robust mental frameworks can transform our understanding of any subject, from quantum mechanics to everyday life. The power of mental models. When Dr. Sarah Martinez first approached the challenge of designing artificial neural networks, she found herself overwhelmed by the complexity. Then she remembered Feynman's approach. Instead of trying to grasp the entire system at once, she began building a mental model of how neurons might talk to each other, imagining them as people at a cocktail party passing messages. This simple model led to breakthrough insights in network architecture that her more technically focused colleagues had missed. The beauty of mental models, she explains, isn't in their complexity, but in their utility. A good model isn't necessarily the most accurate. It's the one that helps you understand and predict. The architecture of understanding. James Chun, a climate scientist, faced a similar challenge when trying to explain complex atmospheric systems to policymakers. He discovered that by modeling climate patterns after familiar household concepts, comparing atmospheric circulation to a kitchen's heat distribution, for instance, he could make complex ideas not just understandable, but memorable. The power of this approach lies in its flexibility. When one model proves inadequate, another can take its place or complement it. Feynman often used multiple models for the same phenomenon, switching between them as needed. He might think of an electron as a particle when considering certain problems, but as a wave when dealing with others. The key was knowing when to use each model. From abstract to concrete. Maria Rodriguez, an architect, transformed her approach to sustainable design by building mental models based on natural systems. She began seeing buildings not as static structures, but as living organisms, breathing, consuming energy, and adapting to their environment. This shift in perspective led to innovative designs that dramatically reduced energy consumption while improving occupant comfort. The moment I stopped thinking about buildings as boxes and started thinking about them as ecosystems, she recalls, everything changed. The same problems were there, but now I had new ways to solve them. The evolution of understanding. Mental models aren't static. They grow and evolve with use. When Feynman first developed his diagrams, they were simple tools for personal understanding. Over time, they evolved into a powerful formal system used by physicists worldwide. Yet they retained their essential characteristic, making the complex comprehensible through visual thinking. Dr. Michael Chong, a neurosurgeon, describes a similar evolution in his understanding of the brain. I started with simple models, the brain as a computer, as a city, as an ecosystem. Each model revealed different aspects of how the brain works. Over time, These models became more sophisticated, but they remain grounded in tangible, understandable concepts. The future of thinking. In our increasingly complex world, the ability to build and use mental models becomes ever more crucial. As artificial intelligence handles more routine tasks, human value increasingly lies in our ability to understand and navigate complexity through creative metaphor and analogy. Consider how Sarah Kim, a data scientist, approaches massive datasets. Rather than getting lost in the numbers, she models data flows as river systems, with tributaries feeding into larger streams of information. This model helps her identify patterns and anomalies that purely statistical approaches might miss. Chapter 10. The Path Forward. The good thing about science is that it's true whether or not you believe in it. Richard Feynman. On his last day teaching at Caltech, Feynman didn't discuss physics. Instead, he talked about learning itself. He spoke of how the principles he discovered in physics, curiosity, simplicity, honesty, applied far beyond the laboratory. His message was clear. The methods of understanding he developed weren't just for scientists. They were for everyone seeking to understand their world more deeply. This final chapter explores how to integrate the Feynman framework into our rapidly changing world. As we face challenges Feynman could never have imagined, artificial intelligence, climate change, global connectivity, his approach to understanding becomes more relevant than ever. The modern mind. Sarah Chun, a technology educator, discovered this relevance firsthand when teaching coding to refugees. I was struggling to explain programming concepts, she recalls, until I remembered Feynman's approach. Instead of starting with code, I started with stories. I asked them to explain how they would teach someone to cook their favorite meal. Suddenly, algorithmic thinking made sense to them. It wasn't about computers anymore. It was about breaking down complex processes into simple steps. The digital age hasn't changed the fundamental way humans learn and understand. If anything, it has made Feynman's principles more crucial. In a world of information overload, the ability to break down complex ideas, to question assumptions, and to build genuine understanding becomes increasingly valuable. Adapting to change. Dr. James Morrison, an AI researcher, applies Feynman's principles to one of today's most challenging fields. People often think AI is too complex for non-specialists to understand, he explains. But Feynman would disagree. The fundamental concepts, pattern recognition, learning from feedback, iterative improvement, are things we all experience. When we strip away the jargon, even the most advanced AI concepts become accessible. This ability to adapt timeless principles to new challenges lies at the heart of the Feynman approach. Whether facing quantum mechanics or quantum computing, the core methods remain the same. Start with curiosity, embrace simplicity, teach to learn, maintain honesty, and never lose the joy of discovery. Building learning communities. Maria Rodriguez found this approach transformed not just individual understanding, but entire organizations. As Chief Innovation Officer at a global technology company, she introduced what she calls Feynman Spaces, physical and virtual environments where people are encouraged to question, explain, and explore ideas together. The magic happens, she says, when people feel safe asking stupid questions. When an executive can admit they don't understand something. When a junior employee can challenge established wisdom, we start seeing real innovation. The digital enhancement. Today's technology offers unprecedented opportunities to apply Feynman's principles. Virtual reality can help visualize complex concepts. Global connectivity enables teaching and learning across borders. AI can help identify patterns in data. But these are tools, not solutions. The core work of understanding still requires human curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking. Beyond knowledge. Michael Torres, a high school teacher, discovered that teaching Feynman's methods transformed not just what his students learned, but how they approached life itself. They stopped memorizing and started understanding, he explains. More importantly, they developed confidence in their ability to learn anything. When you know how to break down complex ideas, when you're not afraid to ask basic questions, no subject seems impossible. The future of understanding. As we look ahead, the challenges we face will require not just knowledge, but understanding. Climate change, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering. These aren't just technical challenges, but challenges of comprehension. How do we understand complex systems? How do we make wise decisions in the face of uncertainty? How do we maintain our humanity in an increasingly technological world? Feynman's approach offers a way forward. By combining rigorous thinking with childlike curiosity, by breaking down complexity without losing sight of wonder, we can develop the deep understanding these challenges require. The personal journey. The Feynman framework isn't just a set of techniques. It's an invitation to a particular way of living. It suggests that understanding isn't a destination but a journey, that every question leads to new discoveries, and that the joy of learning never needs to end. As we conclude this book, remember that Feynman's greatest legacy isn't in his scientific discoveries, but in his approach to understanding itself. He showed us that complexity doesn't have to be intimidating, that ignorance can be the beginning of wisdom, and that the pursuit of knowledge can be one of life's greatest adventures. Epilogue. The continuing journey. On a warm summer evening in 1988, just months before his death, Richard Feynman sat on his porch in Pasadena, watching the sunset. A graduate student had asked him to sum up his life's most important lesson. After a long pause, he smiled and said, "The world is far more fascinating than we can imagine, and understanding it is worth every moment we spend trying." This simple statement encapsulates what made Feynman not just a great scientist, but a great teacher of thinking itself. His legacy isn't just in the physics equations that bear his name or the quantum theories he developed. It's in the way he showed us how to think, learn, and understand. As we've explored throughout this book, Feynman's approach transcends any single field. We've seen how his principles transform everything from artificial intelligence research to elementary school teaching, from business innovation to personal growth. But perhaps most importantly, we've seen how these principles can enrich our own lives and work. Consider Dr. Lisa Chun, whom we met earlier in this book. 5 years after implementing Feynman's methods in her research lab, she made an observation that captures the essence of his approach. The biggest change wasn't in our results, though those improved dramatically, she explains. It was in how we experienced the work itself. We stopped seeing problems as obstacles and started seeing them as mysteries waiting to be solved. Every day became an adventure in understanding. This transformation, from seeing learning as a chore to experiencing it as an adventure, may be Feynman's greatest gift to us. In a world that increasingly values specialization and technical expertise, he reminded us that the most powerful understanding comes from maintaining our natural curiosity and joy in discovery. James Morrison, the architect we encountered in our journey, puts it this way: Feynman taught us that understanding isn't about accumulating knowledge. It's about seeing the world more clearly. Every time I look at a building now, I see not just its structure, but the ideas behind it, the problems it's trying to solve, the story it's trying to tell. As we face the challenges of our time, climate change, technological disruption, social transformation, we need this kind of deep understanding more than ever. We need the courage to ask basic questions, the clarity to see simple solutions, the honesty to admit what we don't know, and the joy to keep exploring. The tools Feynman left us: curious questioning, simplification, teaching as learning, intellectual honesty, careful observation, cross-pollination of ideas, the joy of discovery, and building mental models, aren't just techniques for better learning. They're invitations to a richer, more engaging way of living. As you close this book and continue your own journey of understanding, remember that every question you ask, every explanation you attempt, every connection you make, carries forward this legacy. In your workplace, in your studies, in your daily life, you have the opportunity to approach the world with the same curiosity and joy that made Feynman not just a great scientist, but a model for how to think and live. For in the end, the greatest lesson Feynman taught us wasn't about physics or mathematics or even science itself. It was about the profound satisfaction that comes from truly understanding something, anything, and the endless adventure that awaits those who maintain their curiosity about the world. The journey of understanding never really ends. Each answer leads to new questions, each insight to new mysteries. And that, perhaps, is the most wonderful thing of all. End book.